Hey, welcome back to Atlanta Music Critic. I'm Liam, and I'm super stoked to be here with you today for an exciting conversation. We've got AMC creator William Ford sitting down with the talented composer Debra Kaye. If you've been following this channel, you probably loved William's previous chat with Debra. And now, we're diving into her latest recording, which includes 11 tracks. This amazing album features her first string quartet and an inspiring orchestral piece called Ikarus Among the Stars, an elegy for orchestra and fixed media, which gave the album its name. Ikarus was created in memory of Benjamin Kloczko. It incorporates some of his hip-hop recordings into the orchestral magic. You can find the album on Navona Records, available on Amazon and other streaming platforms. Debra Kaye's inspiration knows no bounds. She can turn anything into a beautiful composition. Her works, two of which have won multiple awards, draw from Spanish poetry, real-life tragedies, and even pieces from her fellow contemporary composers. And what ties it all together is Kaye's masterful use of tonality, creating an extraordinary tapestry of music. By the way, this is the second all-Kaye portrait album to hit the market, following her first one titled And So It Begins, released on Ravello Records. Both albums were produced by the Grammy-winning Judith Sherman. Talk about an impressive team. Now, before we get started with this amazing conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Stay tuned for some awesome insights.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for your flexibility.
Last time we talked, you were in California. Where are you now?
I'm in New York. This is my one-bedroom apartment.
And when did you come back from California?
Oh boy, I can't even know what season it is because there, when it's winter, it feels like spring here. So I guess at the beginning of spring here, end of March, something like that.
Okay, yeah. So you're back into the swing of things.
I'm in the swing. The season just ended, end of June. I had a couple of concerts and now we're into summer.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it the doldrums there with regard to performing arts?
Well, there's a lot still going on in New York, but most of my performances a lot of seasons end at the end of June or sometime, and then summer programs begin and festivals and things like that. There's a fair amount of outdoor stuff.
Point of our conversation today is to talk about your new recording. I think it has 12 tracks. It's divided up among 6 different pieces.
Yes. Some of them are multi-movement. Yes.
Right. Would you say that this is a retrospective or a compendium or simply a collection of your works that you'll want people to hear?
I think kind of 2 of the 3 would accurately, kind of a compendium of unrecorded works at that point that I wanted to put out into the world that I'm pleased with. I think the earliest is from 2015. I hadn't done, my last recording was a long time ago now, like 2014 it came out. So it's from 2015 to, I think the latest one was probably 2021. So I just gathered up what seemed worthy and put it out there. But I'm feeling like I got a bunch more recordings in me, so not quite yet a retrospective, we hope.
How did the recording come about? What was the process by which you and whatever powers that be in the recording business said, oh, let's do this?
I started by getting in touch with the wonderful producer, Judith Sherman, to see if she had availability. And she said yes. She did my first album as well, figuring out where she likes to record. And this was we were wearing masks during the recording. So we recorded in 2021. So I kind of came out of the pandemic, like, let's do this. And we recorded enough for 2 albums actually in that week. So the second album will be coming out in March 2024. Yeah, and then it was just a lot of organizing, fitting schedules together, calling up players, negotiating with them. Everything, I think, with wonderful musicians who are dedicated is an honorarium. So, I was so lucky to get people who were so dedicated to the cause of the piece and the music and gave their all.
And the recording location was?
It was actually in Mount Vernon, New York. So I had to take the train there. And it's a recording studio called Octavian Audio. And it was very homey. It was like somebody's basement, with like a picnic table and snacks and, and then the booth and all of that. And Judith works with them all the time, so she knows them, and it was just very friendly.
What about the Youth Philharmonic?
Yes, that's actually the live premiere recording that was done in Portland at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall, I believe is the full title. And an amazing group of young people and a brilliant conductor, David Hatner, who is a former New York clarinetist. And once he took this position, he's just developed this group. And the whole program is wonderful. They have various training orchestras. It's a whole educational, very serious, committed group.
How many people were in? How many musicians were there off the top?
It's a huge orchestra, like, because they want all the kids playing. So, I mean, I'd say, I don't know exactly, but maybe 80. It was a big orchestra, 80, 90.
Did you make the selections overall of what was to be performed?
For that concert?
I'm sorry, for the recording, the whole recording.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I put them in order too. The last recording I did with Judy, she figured out a brilliant order, and this time she let me do it. But she approved. She watched over. So that was good training, and my training wheels.
What would you say about the exchange, which is the first piece?
Well, that was written for the Milwaukee Grain Exchange in Milwaukee, of course, commissioned by a Chicago group called Access Contemporary Music. It was for this festival that Milwaukee has, Doors Open Milwaukee, where they open the doors of these historic buildings to the public for free. And so my job was to write a short piece for clarinet and cello. It would be performed once every half hour on that certain day. And I couldn't go to Milwaukee before to see this space, but there was an online 3D tour you could take. And I mean, it's a huge 1870s building that was their grain exchange. It's the first ever octagonal trading floor. It has beautiful high vaulted ceilings. So immediately to me, that says it's going to be live. Oh, cool. And then hand painted frescoes of scenes from the time of, the farmers bringing in the wheat, and even some Native Americans in front of their teepees, as part of this exchange of goods. And now it's used. I thought of it as kind of a piazza then and now, because now it's used for weddings and events and things like that. And it's a beautiful building. So I was really struck by the Native American piece, because I thought, wow, they were living side by side and interacting, and before being obliterated almost. And I wanted to recognize that in some way. And so the octagonal aspect reminded me in a way of the welcoming of the four directions. That's the Native American tradition. So at a place about 2/3 of the way through, the piece becomes more regular and more meditative, and it welcomes the four directions. I mean, before that, I was thinking of the deal making and the haggling and the agreements that would happen in a place like that.
The next piece then is your string quartet.
So that one grew out of really the second movement, the slow movement, which I jotted down when I was in Atlanta and 16, maybe the first 16 bars of it, the first few phrases. And it kind of, that theme followed me as something I wanted to do in my life. It just seemed, when you're that age, you're finding out who you are. And it just seemed like an important part of who I was somehow. And it has a kind of a rising and a falling by half step theme, will it rise or will it fall, all those questions. And so then I built the other movements out around that. And the theme it's called, subtitled Encountering Lorca, which seemed appropriate. I was reading some Lorca at the time, and in the body of his work, certain images keep recurring in different poems, and they're in different contexts and might mean different things. And that kind of seemed very musical to me, and kind of something that I aspire to in my own work, to keep developing these themes. And of course, in the course of a single piece, in various movements, it's often structured that way. So I did that, taking that kernel from when I was 16 and using it in various ways throughout.
And that was written in?
Well, little by little. I think first I completed the second movement, then I went back to the first. The final movement was probably over like a 2 or 3 year period. So probably 2015 to 2018, something like that. And then, of course, I was still revising all these things the week of the morning before we'd go into the studio. No, you need staccato there, or, there's so many dots on the page.
And what about the Call of the Dance?
Oh, that was also over a period. That was commissioned by flutist Karl Gutowski. And first he asked for the first movement. It was a wedding gift for his niece. And so since it was about love, I called it fantasy. And, I got to know about them, what kind of music they like, but also what kind of relationship they have, what they like to do. They're playful, what their personalities are like. So I figured flute and piano would be equal partners as in their relationship. And then there's the question, well, is the piano the guy and the flute the girl, kind of woman, whatever. And I thought, no, these are qualities, emotional and whatever qualities of being, and that it could be both.
All right.
Then he played it a lot and enjoyed playing it. And then he asked, well, why don't we make a suite out of this? So he commissioned the next two movements. And the second movement is again an elegy. So this was another tragedy. His older brother, Paul, died of AIDS in 1985. And it was his beloved older brother. So such a shock. He was a young kid, really, when this happened. So again, I asked for the family stories and what Paul was like. And it turns out he was both kind of mathematical of mind, very, very organized, but he also was whimsical, and he loved art, and he spent time in Spain. So I tried to incorporate these qualities, and again, kind of give a chance to mourn, but also celebrate the person, and kind of just in this sense, a shock of losing your older brother when you're like 12 years. And then the third movement is a return to life, to the call of life, the call of the dance, but it begins with, you know, a more slow thing that eventually evolves into more dance-like. And in the second movement, it begins, as you probably know, with an inside piano, big crash on the bass strings, and then some flute breath sounds, kind of the ashes to ashes, dust to dust idea. It ends with those two.
So is the dance the stand-in for life?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Sky's Falling.
Oh, that one's a horse of a different color. So my partner is a writer, Roger Aplon, and we went to a concert one night. It was Elliott Carter's double concerto for harpsichord and piano. And he got inspired to write a poem based on that. And the first sentence is something like, the first phrase is the sky is falling, God bless the sky and all its inhabitants. And I think that's it. Sky is falling. Yeah. So, and it goes on from there. I often call his work music because it's not always, I slip and call it music because it's not always linear. It's imagery, and you just kind of have to let it wash over you. So I did some music behind that originally with him reading, so interspersed with piano solos and just accompanying him as he spoke. And I felt that it was equally good as a solo piano piece. So by then I got the wonderful pianist Marta Aznavourian to play it. And there are improvisatory places in this too. So we were able to get together before the session and kind of go over some of that. And she was so game to do it and just put her whole self into it. So it's like guided improv, like maybe Tumble Down or Scalar Up or, you know, Crash or whatever.
Okay. The Ikarus piece,
Yes.
when was that composed?
That would have been, I believe, 2017.
There's a story behind it.
Yes.
An inspiration. Can you share that?
Sure. Unfortunately, it's a memorial piece for a young musician, I think quite talented, who played in the Portland Youth Philharmonic. I knew his dad. We used to be neighbors. The dad moved away. 5 years later, I get a call from him saying that this tragedy had struck the family and his beloved son, Benjamin Yaphet Klatchko, had passed away at just before his 17th birthday. His father, Asher, suggested that I write first a duo, which is also included here, Ikarus Duo for Binya. Binya played both viola and violin, and he played in the Portland Youth Philharmonic. So Asher suggested the theme of Icarus. It seemed right to him, and it seemed a very worthy project and theme. And believe me, I felt the weight of the responsibility to memorialize. I wanted to both celebrate and honor and mourn him, to like go through the process of what it is and such a tragedy, such a young person. He wrote music as well as played. He had a home recording studio. He did like hip hop and rap songs and wrote his own lyrics. Really, he was probably brilliant. I wanted to be able to use some of his actual tracks in the orchestral piece, which I was able to do. So the name of his song, that song that he sings, is Among the Stars. So somehow the title Ikarus Among the Stars just kind of fell into my lap.
So that's how the rap portion comes into the piece, as well as the very early drum beats, I assume.
Well, there is some actual written drum part that I wrote, but things with electronics and a beat, they're Binya's. And it was just musically, it was very cool to collaborate with a 16-year-old. It's like, wow, that's neat. I like that. And I like his music.
So did you take his, for example, rap piece and write music behind it?
Well, I had to figure, I'm not a high-tech person. I mean, I wish I was more because there are things I'm attracted to doing. But I wanted to do it in a way that would be simple. So often when the track comes in, so it can be just cue, the conductor can cue someone to start the iTunes file. And I would just sometimes leave held long notes in the strings or something, something that would bleed over, not too busy, so that it would be easy and forgiving if they were a little late or whatever. And it kind of all worked out. Each cue is a little different, but I tried to keep it simple.
So your challenge really wasn't to understand the hip hop genre as such, but rather to understand the tonal qualities of the section and then write under that or over that, however you want to put it.
Just to respond musically, I suppose, the tonal qualities, the rhythmic qualities. So I wanted it to feel natural. So I kind of analyzed what he was doing, like maybe the phrase structure, the rhythms, some interval qualities perhaps, or melodic qualities. And I did variations on some of that earlier in the actual orchestra parts, so that when his variation came up, it would seem like it grew out of the piece.
And the electronic tones, tell me how that worked.
I'm really not sure. They gave me the tracks, the digital tracks. So he had a recording studio. I think he had certain programs or something. I'd really have to ask his dad to know more, but it was whatever he did. It could have been with his phone. Very well could have been. There's a lot. You can maybe GarageBand some stuff, So I had to choose from many tracks that he had, and I had to also avoid words that might have to be bleeped, because this was going to be in a school, in a high school context. Well, I had to just find sections that didn't use any of those words, and luckily it worked out. I was like, how do I do this?
what's the point of issuing a recording for you?
It's an interesting one. You mean a physical CD or of a just even digital, just getting the music out there?
Just getting the music out there. Is it to make money?
No.
I
You
knew
don't
the
make
answer.
money doing these things. You don't. And even like, so then I might see, oh, there were 273 downloads. It's like, but I don't get anything unless it comes up to at least $25, and that's maybe 10, 15. So it's not about that. It's musicians are crazy. You have to be dedicated, and it's your life's work. And for me, the older I get, the more glad I am that I've done this. I just want to grow in the art and the craft and be appreciated where I am and get the music out there and have people hear it. And it makes no sense. If you can make a life in music work and if it's your passion, then you do it. But I can tell you this CD, I'm really happy with it. And it's like one of those life big gratifying things, even if nothing else happened with it, although we did get one good review so far. Well, waiting on others.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm playing the game. I'm having fun most of the time. And I feel very grateful to be able to live my life this way. So
and as long as you have musicians who are cooperative and involved, invested, and willing to do it, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's a fruition. It's a fruition for me and a blooming. So just feels good on a personal level.
Right. I just have one final question. Have you ever watched Philomena Kunk on YouTube?
No.
She's played by a comedian who asks the most absurd questions of experts.
Uh-huh.
And she does it in a newscaster kind of style.
Oh, I might have seen this once or twice.
So freaking funny.
Oh, and they're real experts and they answer seriously.
Yes. And so one of the questions she asks somebody, well, what's your background? And he says, well, I was educated. And she says, no, what's your background in your picture? So I'm asking you a question. What's your background? What's that painting behind you?
Oh, this one.
Yes.
I sat on the street. It was being thrown out. It's a framed print from the Whitney, and it's Michael Heiser, dragged mass geometric. And I dragged it back. It was about the time that school was letting out. I tried to get on a bus with it. It's like 5x5 or something. It was hard to carry. I couldn't get on the bus because there's so many school kids. And so I finally had to take a cab, and they had to tie down the trunk to get it in there. And I dragged it home and put it up. So it's like, I've been in this apartment for, I don't want to tell you how long. And it has like all these colors in it, but this picture pulled it all together. It enabled everything else to be.
Because it is quite stunning.
Yeah. And, I love it.
So it was a street find.
It was a street find in good condition.
Gee.
So,
well, yeah. How exactly did you run across it? Where was it?
Somebody put it out in the trash, on West End Avenue. And I was walking along and there it was. And it's like, I was just fixing up my apartment and looking for things. And I said, ooh,
wow.
Yeah.
What a find. Congratulations.
I've found a few good street items. I don't pick things up on the street anymore, post-pandemic especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So have you seen the original?
That's a good question. No, I actually haven't. It was from a 1985 show. But Michael Heiser now does these huge installation type projects, and there's one up in Beacon where I'm often there, and I've seen some of his other work.
Well, congratulations on your find. It's quite beautiful. And congratulations on the CD recording. I never quite know what to call them because...
Right. I think now we call them albums. It's because, not all of them are issued as CDs. And it's questionable whether even to do that. But I guess I just wanted to do it physical as well.
Yeah, that's why I resorted to recording because it seems to encompass them all. But congratulations on it.
Thank you so much.
And it is quite wonderful. And it is quite No piece is like the other, and yet obviously there's a unifying theme, which is, of course, you and your skills. So congratulations on it.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to Debra and William for that insightful and intriguing conversation. As you can tell, Debra Kaye's works range from lyrical to grooving, experimental to coloristic, but above all, expressive and deeply felt. Kaye is a born storyteller, and it's reflected in her dramatic music, brimming with visceral power. Here is a link for you to enjoy the entire album. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Please become a patron at www.patreon.com/AtlantaMusicCritic. I invite you to comment on this interview, and to suggest others who you would like to see interviewed by William. This is Liam. Thanks for watching Atlanta Music Critic. See you again soon.